Welcome to the Full Story series. You see, here at Comicstorian, we bring you daily videos catching you up on various parts of the lore within your favorite pop culture icons of comic books, video games, and movies. Many times, this takes up to a year to 2 years to do a full story, as we're waiting for various releases within the comic books or the games or whatever. Basically, we can't do it all at once. So, once these videos are finally done, we combine them all into an epic movie-level event for you, just making it easier for you to access all of the videos within the playlist. A while ago, during the Original Sin event, Thor was deemed unworthy due to a word that Nick Fury had said to him. He dropped the hammer and then it was picked up by Jane Foster, who became Thor. And this is the comic book Thor that starred Jane Foster for this period. And she went on her own adventures, and we were prepped for the War of the Realms. So if you're getting into the War of the Realms, this is kind of important towards that. This also contains the Unworthy Thor storyline, as this happened during the event, so we really didn't know where else to put it. If you're wondering overall where you are, well, this is the Comicstorian channel. We do audio dramas of the lore of your favorite pop culture icons right here on a daily basis. But at this point, let's get into the Jane Foster Thor storyline that took us almost 2 years to cover in its entirety. I hope you enjoy. There has been a question on everyone's tongue since the day a new character was introduced. Thor. But not the Thor that you know. You see, at the end of the Original Sin event, and in our video for it, Thor was deemed unworthy of his Mjolnir because of something that Nick Fury said to him, and he lost control of the hammer. It landed on the moon and nobody has been able to lift it. Well, almost no one. The All-Father Odin and the All-Mother Freya both tried to no avail. All of Thor's friends even tried, to no avail. And Thor himself tried for weeks, to no avail. One person was able to, though. A new Thor. A female Thor. But she doesn't go by the name Female Thor, or even Thor Rita as Spider-Man tried to call her. She just goes by Thor, and no one knows her identity because it's one of her closely guarded secrets. The original Thor now goes by the name of ODINSON, and he wields a mighty axe. At first, he demanded to know who took his hammer, but when he saw that she was only fighting for justice, he understood why Mjolnir chose her and did not allow him to lift the hammer again. He does accept that she is worthy and that he isn't, but he's not done trying to fix his own worthiness, and he believes that step one is to find out who this person that can wield his hammer is. If she won't tell him her identity, then he will cut through the 10 realms until someone tells him. Many nights he heads back to the spot on the moon where he dropped the hammer, just to look at where it once was. Why is she worthy? Why? Odinson's friend Volstagg comes over to see if he's okay, because thou art yelling to thyself on the moon, as he puts it. But Odinson just turns to him. Unless you were here to tell me the name of the woman beneath Thor's helmet, I care not what you have to say, Senator Volstagg. But Volstagg isn't here to discuss the new Thor. He's here to let Odinson know Jane Foster has collapsed. You see, Jane Foster was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's been residing on Asgard under their care ever since. She is refusing any magical treatments and insisting on doing this the way that they handle it on Midgard. She is human, and she will suffer as humans do, because magic comes with a price, and she doesn't trust it. No matter how much Odinson begs, she just continues to refuse. So they embrace, and she asks him, "Are you really calling yourself Odinson? You are so much more than your father's son. When you are well, you can call me whatever you'd like," he says as he holds her closer. "I'm going to remember that, Lord Thunderbritches." As Odinson walks away, he takes out a list, and he crosses off the name Jane Foster. This is his list of everyone who could possibly be the new Thor. And Jane is just too ill to possibly take up that role. So his next stop is Agent Coulson to demand the answer, who is Thor? But Coulson doesn't know either. As a matter of fact, he was hoping that Odinson could fill him in, and in response, Odinson smashes his axe into Coulson's computer. Though if you need time to think about it, that's cool too, Coulson says. Where is Agent Solomon? Odinson demands to know. Agent Solomon? She's been on leave for at least a few weeks. Wait, you don't think that she's the new Thor, do you? And Odinson just glares at him. We could probably call her. You want to call her? Let's call her. Agent Solomon, this is SHIELD Command. Come in, please. Oddly enough, no one has seen Agent Solomon in about 5 days, ever since she went to the moon to find her hero, Thor. So what of this new Thor? What is she doing? Well, her first battles have been against Minotaur and Malekith, and they appear to be making an alliance, so she's here to stop it. Meanwhile, the All-Mother approaches the All-Father. This is madness. Tell me that the hushed whispers of your guards are untrue. Tell me you did not put your murderous, deranged brother in control of the most dangerous weapon known to the gods. But Odin is unfazed by this accusation. Kull serves my will of late. I dare say he has shown more fealty than you have, Freya. And in response, she slaps him, but he barely flinches. You should not have done that. I will see that hammer return to Asgard, no matter the cost. Back with Thor, just as she's preparing to lay waste to Minotaur and Malekith, the Destroyer lands on top of her, knocking her over. But this is Thor, do not be mistaken, and she leaps into the air prepared for battle, only to be knocked aside by the Destroyer once again. Not to be trifled with, Thor leaps back into battle and the two of them fall from the Minotaur's floating kingdom. Alas, as Thor hits the ground, she drops Mjolnir. But she looks up to see the Destroyer still pressing forward, now with Mjolnir in his hands. But need I remind you that this is Thor, and she jumps up headbutting the Destroyer. As the battle carries on elsewhere, Odinson receives a call from his mother as he rides the skies of Midgard. She uses the magics of the Bifrost to teleport to Odinson and inform him that his father is attempting to kill Thor. She needs his assistance and any others that he can think of. And he replies with, "My axe is yours, mother, and I already hold a list of those that may fight alongside us." And Thor. Back with Thor, she's getting beat by her own hammer, but bloodied and beaten, she gets back up. "That will be the last time that you ever strike me with mine own hammer." And she gets up and begins to call back Mjolnir. The Destroyer is not worthy, and he's only able to hold it because it's technically a machine. So Thor uses her control over Mjolnir to launch the Destroyer throughout the entire battlefield, bouncing him off every wall and surface there. Then, as the goddess of thunder, she summons the power of lightning down to throw everything at the Destroyer. The explosion is massive, and then the hammer returns to Thor, where she gives it a kiss. Good hammer. Problem is, this is the Destroyer, one of Thor's greatest enemies and an unstoppable machine. It continues to walk forward, and Thor thinks to herself, "It can't end this way. I will not be a footnote in the history of Thor. I will not be Thor for 5 days and then have died." When suddenly the Bifrost opens and out steps Odinson and everyone that he had on his list of potential new Thors. "You will not stand alone this day, Thor. So swears Prince Odinson of Asgard and his mother." The entire group of women that he brought with him leap into the fray and they begin to beat down the Destroyer. And there's a lot of them, too many for the Destroyer. All the while, Thor insists that she had this and does not require the help. Eventually, Freya, the All-Mother, leaps onto the Destroyer and stabs it right in the face. Kull turns to Odin in the throne room. Your wife just stabbed me in the face, if you were unaware." But the Destroyer then takes Freya by the throat and shoots another blast into the air. Odinson and Thor both leap in to protect Lady Freya, and she looks at the Destroyer in the eyes. "Do you see what you have wrought, Lord Husband? Look upon thy mighty works, the legacy of Odin." So Odin turns his head from his viewing orb. "Let it go, Kull." "What?" "Let her go and leave the battlefield. Damn you, woman, for making me the villain." With that, the Destroyer takes off and leaves everyone there. Thor thanks everyone for what they've done this day, while they begin to clean up the battlefield. Sif then turns to Thor before she leaves. "You want my advice? Lose the hammer and the sidekick." "Sidekick?" Odinson shouts out questioningly. "Both are bound to bring you naught but trouble." And Sif leaves with everyone else, leaving just Odinson and Thor. Odinson turns to Thor. "Just so that we are clear, I am not thy sidekick. No more secrets, Thor. I know who you are. You are Agent Rosalind Solomon, and if you just admit to me that you are that person, I will tell you what Nicholas Fury said to me that left me unworthy. Please, tell me the truth." Thor stumbles to find her words. I when out of the blue, Agent Solomon arrives. She drops down with Odinson and Thor and starts shouting at Thor. "You nearly got me killed, lady. I was on that island when you started this fight." Odinson just stands there in shock. So Thor isn't Agent Solomon? He just gawks at her, repeating, "Agent Solomon?" Thor sees this as her chance, and she takes off for the heavens once again, leaving Odinson standing there to talk things out with Rosalind. Thor then returns to an undisclosed location on Asgard, where she turns and throws Mjolnir off into space to await her call again. As she begins to change back into her true self, she thinks to herself that this is how it needs to be. If Odinson and everyone really knew who she was, they would never allow her to remain as Thor. But the world needs a Thor, and that's what matters. They need a god who understands what it means to be humbled, to be mortal. And as the last of the magic from Mjolnir leaves Thor, she falls to the ground weak. And we see that Thor is in fact Jane Foster. She sits in the hospital receiving her normal chemotherapy, began as a lump in her breast, and then it spread to her lymph nodes and possibly her liver. She comes back over and over to get treatment as the doctors can't understand why the treatment isn't working. But there is a reason, just one that she can't tell them. A nurse comes in to check on Jane to make sure that she has someone to help her home, and she tells them, yeah, a coworker. Jane looks up to see the weather. Roxxon built a storm tracking space station, but up in the space station, the reporters began telling the weather when they are thrown down to the floor. Looking up, the reporters see that the station was hit by something, and that something is a body. Across the body is written, "So begins the War of the Realms." Before anyone can figure out what that could mean, more bodies begin to fly into the space station, tearing it apart. The news cuts the feed stating that there are minor technical difficulties, but Jane knows better, and she whispers, "Mjolnir." The mystical hammer begins to fly towards Earth faster than the falling space station. She goes outside to grab the hammer, thinking to herself, who knew dying could be so much fun? Iron Man watches as the satellite begins to come crashing down, and he asks Doctor Strange, how do we stop this? And Doctor Strange tells him, we don't, she does. Thor manages to stop the satellite from causing too much damage, and she helps the workers out. Iron Man then asks if she knows what could have caused it, and she responds with, I. And she flies back off. Okay then, nice chat. Thor goes into space to see all of the bodies floating around and realizes that they are elf bodies. There is one person who could possibly be behind this, Malekith the Accursed. Thor returns to the hospital to wake up Volstagg as it's time to go back to Heidel. Jane and Volstagg are both a part of the Congress of Worlds, and Jane represents Midgard. The Light Elves begin accusing the Dark Elves of the bodies floating around in space. Jane agrees with them, but she has to tell them that she didn't see it firsthand. Thor told her about them because she's still trying to keep her identity secret. As the Congress begins pointing fingers, Jane and Volstagg can do nothing but watch as everyone tries to focus on other threats. Back in the holding cells of Asgard, Jane goes to meet Lady Freya. Freya, the All-Mother, was thrown in prison for acts of treason against Odin, the All-Father. Jane tells her how Malekith has begun a war with the Light Elves, and the Congress does not know what to do because they fear what Odin may do. Before leaving though, Freya tells her to tell Thor that her duty lies with Elfheim and the Light Elves. Thor travels to the Bifrost Bridge, but is stopped by Heimdall. He tells her that he only serves the will of the All-Father, but he is not here to stop her. They are. Thor looks back to see Cole Bronson, Odin's brother and the Minister of Justice. But while this is starting, over in the Yawning Void, the Dark Council begins to gather to discuss their next move. They know Thor will be coming for them, but they have someone who wishes to join and help them with that. That's when we see Loki step up. I say, it does feel good to be back again. Back at the Bifrost Bridge, the battle between Thor and the Thunder Guard continues, but Thor is starting to get outmatched. In a desperate move, Thor asks if the Thunder Guard can do this, and she throws her hammer and it starts bouncing and hitting all of the guards, but Cole Bronson himself deflects the attack. At that moment, all of the guards begin to throw their hammers at her, but as Cole comes in to give the final blow, he is stopped by Heimdall. Heimdall tells him, not on my bridge, and he throws Thor through the portal. Cole tells him that this is treason, and he is now under arrest. But Heimdall figured that he would just get one of the good cells before they were all taken. Thor finds herself in Alfheim, land of the Light Elves. The war between the Dark and the Light Elves continues as Malekith watches from atop a hill. As he watches though, a crack of lightning comes down, and he knows Thor has come. As they begin to figure out their plan, Amora tells them that this is a job for the Enchantress. Over in the land of the Ice Giants, Laufey, Loki's real father, stands there looking down at his warriors as Loki comes running up asking, can we finally hug it out? Like, come on. And with that, Loki convinces him to go to Alfheim. It did take a little bit of convincing though. Just as this is going on, Thor begins to join the Light and Dark Elf fight when Loki appears before her. Loki is just here for a chat though. The whole Loki plays tricks and Thor hits Loki with the hammer repeatedly thing is getting a bit old, and there's some bigger problems. Odin. While not trusting, after a little back and forth, Thor tells him that they can now talk, and Loki tells her that he was sent here to see them both die. Looking up, Thor can see Bat Riders coming in carrying bombs, so she takes off and begins to call in a great storm. As the clouds begin to form, lightning begins to flow, and with a blink of an eye, vroom! Loki looks up and he hopes that he didn't just watch the last action of Miss Thunder. Jane begins falling from the sky, reaching for Mjolnir. Just a little more, just a little more. And as the two of them begin to reach the ground, Thor stands tall, calling out to Melikath. This war is at an end, Queen Elsa calls out. Fetch your master, Dark Elf dogs. Melikath begins to materialize in front of Thor and the Queen, asking how he may be of service. The Queen insists that this all needs to end, so they must talk about peace alone. Melikath agrees, but only if Thor stays out of it. As the Queen and Melikath walk off, a giant foot comes crashing down, and Thor looks up. Loki continues. Allow me to make a formal introduction. Hi, Daddy. Within the Queen's chambers, Elsa asks Melikath what it is that he wants for this war to come to an end. He states that he wants the land of the elves to be united, no more light and no more dark. Elsa knows that the two races could never join willingly, and the only way that this could happen would be marriage. But she's heard enough. It's time for Melikath to leave, and as she calls out for her mages, they begin to fade away. That is when Amora can be seen as one of the Queen's mages, telling them how it's going to be a lovely wedding. Outside of the castle, everyone waits to see what's happening inside, and Elsa calls out that the time for war has ended. It is now a time for peace, and to do so, herself and Melikath shall wed. Thor comes flying in, telling her that this can't happen. What spell did he cast on her? There's probably something else that you should be worried about. There's a big trial about to happen. Odin sits on his throne, and Freya is awaiting her trial, and he demands that she confess. Freya tells him that she will confess. She will confess that she has become an enabler for her husband, allowing him to become a stubborn and narrow-minded fool of a god. She continues that since he returned from the void with his brother Kull, the realm has moved on without him, and now he's become a tyrant rather than an all-father. Odin slams down, cracking the floor. I am Asgard woman, from now until the end of time. She tells him to do his worst in silencing her, but for the rest of them, he'll need many more hammers. Just outside the chambers, the Asgardians gather. Holding them back is Kull and the Thunder Guards and the Destroyer, but Sif launches an attack on them. Back inside, Odin begins to sentence Freya when suddenly, lightning begins tearing down the door, and there stands Loki and Thor. Hi, other daddy! Odin walks over to Thor, telling her to kneel, but that's kinda not what she had in mind. Odin tells her, it's about time that we put an end to all of this, which Thor agrees to. And with a powerful swing, she bashes Odin right in the face. Now the final battle can begin, the battle between Thor and Odin. The epic fight begins to make its way to the moons of Saturn, and Odin lands face first onto one of their surfaces. He then looks up at Mjolnir. This is all your damn fault! That's when Thor comes back with a giant piece of the moon and slams it down on Odin, telling him to yield. Take your place in the dust and the shadows like a relic. Odin bursts through the rocks. Yield? Did Odin yield for Ymir? Did he yield for Satyr? You can ask them in hell! Back in Asgard, Sif makes her way and freeing Freya from her chains and asks if Freya is sure on freeing Loki. Freya tells everyone that they don't have to trust Loki. He was a spy sent to the Dark Council, but trust in her. She decided this. As everyone readies themselves, Kull comes in with the Thunder Guard and the Destroyer to put an end to all of this. Over on Alfheim, the marriage between Elsa and Melikath continues with them stating, I do. But after Elsa says it, she thinks to herself, does she? She begins to think back. What is she doing? Oh gods. The priest tells Melikath that he may kiss the bride, and he responds with, there won't be any need for that. And he calls over to the guards to take her away to her cell. Melikath then toasts with everyone of the Dark Council. Which realm is next? Thor and Odin continue their battle in space, with Odin finally knocking Thor into Jupiter. But before Odin can land his final attack, Thor throws her hammer into Odin and then flies in to punch him. Down on Asgard, the Destroyer begins to corner Freya, Sif, and Loki. Freya tells Loki to find whoever's controlling the Destroyer so he can put an end to this. Loki tells Freya that she was right about Melikath and his plans for wars across the realms, but she wasn't right about something else. Loki then takes out his dagger and he stabs Freya in the back. Just then, Odin stops, thinking to himself, something's happened. As Loki moves through the wall, Kull waits there for him with a sword to his throat. He tells him that the queen still lives, but his blade was poisoned. So in the art of poisoning, Loki is either really bad or really good at it. Kull continues to tell him that he can go back to Melikath and tell Melikath that he can do whatever he wants, that Asgard remains off limits as long as the Borson brothers live. Loki walks off. For now, the fighting has stopped in Asgard. Odin took Freya away to his innermost sanctum, the chamber of the Odin Sleep. Kull watches over the throne and Jane begins to leave, though she thinks back that no one won this civil war in Asgard, and another war lies elsewhere. There are 10 realms across the world tree, all with their own wonders and terrors, but there is only one guardian who will soar above them all, and her name is Thor. Before we leave though, we see two grunts about to tend to a prisoner who is screaming, "Ah!" He isn't trying to escape, but it is like he suddenly realized something horrible has happened, and that he started to scream for his mother. His mother? I guess they don't make Thors like they used to. They state this as we look past the hammer from the former Ultimate Universe, from another Thor. And that's when we see Odinson, Thor of the Marvel Prime, bound and screaming to break free. Ah! Jane Foster secretly took up the hammer, becoming the new Thor. She entered into a fight against Odin, who refused to allow a new Thor to take the mantle. But after proving herself to everyone except Odin, she entered into a battle to prevent a war from happening between the realms. Then, as her identity was about to be revealed, the hammer used magic that no one knew that it had, and took the form of Jane herself, allowing there to be Jane and Thor in one location. Mysteries didn't end there though, as the hammer told Jane that it wanted to show her its origin, and it took her off into the realms. In the distant reaches of space, there's a crack as the hammer pulls Thor through. At rocketing speeds, it slams into a building, tearing down a wall, and showing Thor a library. The man that can only be assumed to be the librarian floats down towards them, demanding to know why Thor would come crashing through his wall, before answering his own question. Thor is too arrogant to use the door. Thor inquiries as to where they are currently located, as she looks at all of the books and all, and the librarian informs her, "We are in the heaven of heavens, in the center of infinity, home of the Parliament of Pantheons, and the High Holy Court. Built 4 billion years ago by the first of the Elder Gods as a place of divine fellowship and governance." Looking around, continuing her awestruck look, Thor can't believe the amount of gods that are here, and the librarian asks her, "Tell me, girl, why are you here?" Maintaining his stern gaze, the librarian looks at the hammer as Thor tells him that she believes it to be alive. Much to the surprise of Thor, the librarian snickers and tells her to follow him. He pulls out a book from the deepest and darkest reaches of the library, a place only a single candle is keeping lit. Thor looks at the book's title as the librarian reads it to her, The Storm. He then reads her the story of bloodshed and war that began eons ago. A time when a young warrior named Ulik united the clans of rock trolls and invaded the realm of the dwarves. It would have been a short-lived battle if not for Odin, the Allfather, leading the armies of Asgard to the fight. He didn't do it to save the dwarves, but instead he saved their minds and their forges. He, of course, won with great ease. To pay him back, the dwarves presented him with a gift, a token of their appreciation, a nugget of raw uru, the rarest of all of the mystical metals in the realms. It was so strong, in fact, that it was unsmeltable, and even the dwarves' forges could not craft it into a weapon. Odin looked upon his rock and felt that it was fitting. Whenever he would look upon this utterly useless thing, he would be reminded of the dwarves. The rumor is that Uru is a relic from the creation of the universe, a piece of the rock of creation itself. But it is not the only thing that survived all of this time. No, there was also the storm. And it also went by the name, the God of Tempest, or the Mother of Thunder. When the space sharks fled an area, you knew that it was coming. But if you waited for that, it was far too late. This is a sentient superstorm in space, and one day that storm's judgment was to come to Asgard. The Asgardians knew not what to do. While they had won many a battle, they had never faced a storm itself. Luckily, Odin was the Allfather, and the battle raged for many days. In the end, it was the Odin force that won out, and the Allfather had trapped the entire storm within a worthless piece of rock gifted to him by the dwarves. He returned the gift to the dwarves with one demand, that they forge it into a mighty weapon, the mightiest! And thus the hammer of Thor was created, the thunder weapon. Except the storm raged inside of the hammer, and it refused to allow the one who had trapped it to tame it. While he had won in the end, he had lost, because he could not wield the hammer without massive amounts of destruction. And so Odin locked it away inside of his vault until the day that it would find another, one that the storm itself deemed worthy. The librarian closed his book as Thor asked him if the hammer was actually alive, but sadly he told her, perhaps it was once, but not even the mightiest of storms could have survived that long trapped in that hammer. Thor reached out for it, telling him that it spoke to her, and then, as she grasped its handle, it rocketed her off into space again to bring her to parts unknown. A war is brewing and she is needed to be in it. The librarian knew that it was coming, along with death and destruction. The journey of Thor is only truly beginning. What happened to ODINSON, the name that he goes by now, the original Thor? He went off on a drinking binge, which eventually ended with him being lost in space. No one has seen him, and in the unknown vastness of space, aboard a ship bound for who knows where, somebody is not having a good day. ODINSON thinks back on the days long past in his life, days that were spent racing comets from one end of the cosmos to another, with thunder and hammers as his only comrades. He is no longer that god, however. Now, he is unworthy. Now his days are spent fighting, with fist and foot and teeth if that's required. Every day he fights and he fails and he fights again. Aliens of different shapes and sizes tackle him, and he fights back with all of his considerable strength. More of the aliens arrive and their weapons crackle with energy. ODINSON is brought down as they shock him over and over again, and as he struggles to stand, ODINSON remembers a time when he would have tossed these men aside with a swing of his hammer, and he vows that that time will come again. He swears it by the gods. He stretches out his hand, reaching for a hammer. 3 months earlier on the moon, cold and desolate, ODINSON stands upon it, overlooking a crater, pouring a drinking horn of mead down his throat. Strange reports of vandalized and half-eaten satellites have brought him here. Should anything but I rise from this crater, eat it. ODINSON commands his mighty Asgardian goat, Tooth Gnasher, and then he leaps into it. He lands with a crash and he's met by a horde of trolls. Let us skip the banter and start with a smiting. ODINSON states as he pulls free Jarnbjorn from his back and he leaps into battle. But before he can strike the troll, he is struck down by Ulik, the king of trolls. Ulik taunts him. A Thor without a hammer is like a snake without fangs, little more than a worm. I am without a hammer, but not without fangs, ODINSON replies as Tooth Gnasher rams Ulik from behind, throwing the mighty troll away, allowing ODINSON to hack and slash his way through the group of trolls. Tooth Gnasher is thrown past ODINSON, who promises Ulik that he will pay for laying hands on his goat. With a laugh, Ulik brings the walls of the crater down upon ODINSON, burying him and allowing the trolls a chance to escape. I may not be the god that I once was, yet I am still the son of Odin, thinks ODINSON as he lifts the stones with his bare hands. I can handle one paltry moon. The trolls begin to escape, sailing away into space, and ODINSON throws his axe with his considerable strength. It sails through the air, and it misses, spinning off into the unknown vastness of deep space. The trolls laugh, and they sail away. ODINSON stands defeated, his shoulders slumping down as he slides to the ground, and he remembers that this is where it happened. This is where he fell. This is where he became unworthy. There is another. The stranger in a black cloak, wrapped in chains, tells ODINSON, "Who are you?" "Once there was a watcher, now there is only me. I am the unseen. I see all." The stranger speaks in riddles, telling ODINSON about past events, and he tells him once again, "There is another hammer. The hammer of a dead world and a dead Thor." The stranger tells ODINSON where his hammer can be found, and without hesitation, ODINSON mounts Tooth Gnasher and rides through the heavens of old Asgard, where the gods once dwelt. ODINSON pulls up short of Asgard, where it once was, and he discovers that there is nothing but asteroids floating in its empty space. He stares in disbelief until he's disturbed by a crack of thunder and lightning, and before him stands his old friend, Beta Ray Bill. "I know where it was taken. I know who stole it." Before ODINSON can ask any more questions, Beta Ray kneels before him. ODINSON has lost his hammer, so Beta Ray begs him to take his, the mighty Stormbringer. Stormbringer, forged by Odin himself with the power to rival even that of Mjolnir, forged and gifted to the mighty warrior Beta Ray Bill. "Take my hammer, please, Thor. It would be my honor," begs a kneeling Beta Ray. "Rise, my friend. No longer am I Thor, and Stormbringer belongs to you." ODINSON believes himself to not even be worthy of Beta Ray's friendship. Beta Ray knows who has stolen old Asgard, yet before he can speak the name of the thief, he is attacked by enemy ships from space. By them? By them. Let us have words with these thieves, and with all of his considerable strength, ODINSON throws his mighty axe at one of the enemy ships, destroying it to one blow. The two mighty warriors leap into battle, and Beta Ray calls upon the power of Stormbringer, smashing the ships with lightning. As their battle rages on, Beta Ray points to the starship in the distance, indicating that that is where old Asgard has been taken, and without hesitation, ODINSON rides towards the ship on Tooth Gnasher, while Beta Ray yells for him to wait. On board the ship, they shout that they approach, and in the distance, a meek speck in the vast room that houses a giant sphere is the master of the vessel. Reaching out his hand, he turns on a switch on the massive sphere. "Open the bay doors," he orders, and the sphere floats into space and is calm. A massive explosion erupts from the sphere, throwing ODINSON off of Tooth Gnasher. Odinson dreams. He dreams of hammers that are crushing him beneath the weight of his unworthiness. He dreams of whispers. He dreams of a figure shrouded in a living darkness. He awakens to find himself chained in a massive room, surrounded by strange creatures, locked away in small cages. And before him sits his captor, the Collector. You have tried to put me in a cage before, Collector. But the Collector tells him that he is not putting him in a cage, he is taking him home. He drops Odinson into the once mighty realm of old Asgard. Why still Asgard, questions Odinson. Not Asgard, but what resides in it. Odinson is stunned at what he sees, and he finds a massive hammer laying in a crater with a familiar inscription on the side. By Odin's beard, there is another. The Collector looks at him and he tells him, "Tell me how to pick it up." And Odinson refuses. A child then walks out of the prison and the Collector tells him, "Tell me how to lift the hammer or watch him die." Then begins to count. 5. "You fool, you must be worthy," Odinson exclaims as the count continues. 4. "Odinson, please." 3. Then he threatens. 2. "I will kill you for this, Collector." 1. With a crack of thunder, lightning explodes from the hammer, destroying the man threatening the prisoner. Energy crackles around Odinson as he walks towards it, showing him images of another Thor from another realm. An ultimate Thor that fought with the same fury and thunder in his veins. Odinson reaches out his hand and he is shot from behind by the Collector. "The hammer will be mine, Odinson." Every day, Odinson battles the men of the Collector, striving for the hammer of the ultimate Thor. He reaches out his hand and he is struck down, for there are far too many. They stand over him victorious, dragging him back to his cell. As he finds himself once more in his cage, he hears a voice. "Hey, Boybeard, let me eat some of your fingers," calls a voice from the cell next to him. "All you can do is lose at fighting. Don't need fingers for that." The voice belongs to a rather angry hellhound known across the 10 realms as Death Ripper, the Devil Dog, whose actual name is Thori. "You're bad at escaping," Thori notes, "and there's no way off of this ship." Odinson pulls at his chains. "I do not have to make it off of the ship, I just need to reach my hammer." He breaks the chains of these and he throws himself at the energy bars of the cell. "Here we go again," the guards note, but before they can react, the lightning courses through them, and Beta Ray Bill stands amiss to the crackling lightning. "Odinson, my brother, are you ready to summon the thunder?" Beta Ray had also been imprisoned, but he managed to escape and find the mighty Stormbringer. With a powerful swing, he destroys the bars that impede Odinson. "Let Thori out, I'll murder for you, lots and lots of murder." Beta Ray has seen old Asgard and the hammer, and he offers to lead Odinson to it, but with a mention of the hammer, Odinson gets a murderous look at his eyes, and he leaves at Beta Ray. "The hammer is mine." Beta Ray tries to defend himself while pleading with Odinson, who is overcome by warrior madness. Odinson knows that he is overcome with the berserker rage, yet he can't stop himself from throwing Beta Ray across the bill, causing him to drop the Stormbringer. In his rage, Odinson reaches out for it, longing to be whole again, longing to be Thor. But before he can, Proxima Midnight knocks him away, and Black Swan attacks Beta Ray, and the two warriors gather themselves, and Beta Ray calls his mighty hammer to him. "Are you ready, Odinson?" A growl is Odinson's reply. Before the battle can continue, the mysterious cloaked figure teleports the disciples of Thanos away, leaving the two warriors alone. However, in the ship, the Collector stands with his men staring at the mighty hammer. Each day, the storm surrounding the hammer grows more powerful, and soon it will destroy the entire ship, and the Collector does not care. Suddenly, Thanos' disciples attack the Collector, claiming the hammer for Thanos himself, and while they fight, the mysterious cloaked individual slips quietly towards it, reaching for the hammer. Thunder crashes and lightning strikes, cutting everyone off from the power. Odinson grabs his axe and he strides through the ship with his goat, Tooth Gnasher, the Hellhound Thori, and Beta Ray Bill at his side. "I do not need a hammer to raise hell. This day I claim one nonetheless. So swears the unworthy Thor." Black Swan walks through the raging storm that surrounds the hammer from the Ultimate Universe. However, before she can reach it, a bolt of lightning throws her away. Those who wish to wield the hammer stand around it, unable to reach it, when from the storm steps Odinson. "I have come to claim what is mine. Stand aside or be ready to bleed." "He is just as unworthy as the rest of us. Kill him," declares the mysterious cloaked figure, and the battle rages on. Thor swings his mighty axe and uses his Uru-made arm as a shield against the attacks of Proxima Midnight. Beta Ray Bill throws Stormbringer at Black Swan, promising her a jail cell next to Thanos, and the Collector runs as Tooth Gnasher chases him through the air. Thori stands ready to face the mysterious cloaked stranger, and he calls out, "What are you doing here? Stand down, dog, I command you." And with an eruption of flames from his mouth, he shouts, "You command nothing." After a final blow knocks Proxima Midnight knight to the ground, Odinson strides away through the storm to stand before the mighty hammer at last. Will it feel it? Will it whisper? Chains wrap around his neck before he can even grasp the handle. It's mine, Odinson, you all are! The collector shouts as he lifts Odinson away, and Odinson swings his axe, slicing through the chains, dropping back down to the ground. He frees Tooth Gnasher and he continues the fight, and the collector continues to rant. Everyone is my property! He looks just in time to see Odinson knock him through the air, and they both tumble to the ground. Long ago, Thor was brought low by a whisper. To rise again, to be worthy, he needs to be stronger than whispers, and finally he reaches out, because he also needs a hammer. That, which began with a whisper, now ends with thunder! Energy crackles as he grasps the hammer. I feel it, even if it comes from a universe that I'll never know. The hammer still knows me. Do it, Odinson! Beta Ray calls out. For he is Thor, the god of thunder, and he hears the thunder in his ears, and this is not my hammer, and he releases it. The disciples of Thanos stand over looking at Odinson. We're taking the hammer to Thanos. This is not my hammer, but it is a hammer of a Thor, and it won't be going anywhere with the likes of you. The energy crackles around Odinson as he bellows, raising his fist into the air, and he brings it down with the power of lightning, throwing his enemies far and away, riding the lightning out of the collector's ship. The hammer belongs to me, and you're going back to your cage, Asgardian! The collector yells out as he pulls himself from the rubble that is his ship. He is shocked to see Thor leading the other prisoners away from their now empty cages. I am not taking the hammer, but I am taking back my home, Odinson says as he lifts the collector and throws him off of the ledge. How will we return to Asgard? Questions Beta Ray. Yet there is no need. Energy once again ripples from the mighty hammer, and the old Asgard disappears. Old Asgard is once again where it should be, and Odinson and Beta Ray Bill stand together. Odinson knows that this is not his hammer to lift. The hammer will call to its owner, as his called to the new Thor. Do you believe in your worthiness again? Questions Bill. No god is worthy. That was the meaning of the whisper that brought Thor down. Gods are vain and vengeful. They are unworthy of the worship that humans bestow upon them. Odinson no longer carries his hammer because he truly believes this. So the two warriors rest for the day and they drink. No hammers were lifted, yet the battle was won and the sagas ended. Yet, it is not at an end. Days pass and the hammer sits, and from the darkness someone comes. They have heard the whispers of the hammer as lightning strikes when they reach out and take hold, for it is now time for War Thor! The gods of Asgard have many enemies, as gods often do. But even the boldest of them know better than to attack the Golden City, for those walls are guarded by the all-seeing eye of Heimdall. It is said that he could see a single maggot in a field of freshly fallen snow 1,000 worlds away. Even though he can see things galaxies away, he must blink. And if one were simply fast enough to cross that vast space in a blink of an eye, well, as Heimdall would say, no. Suddenly, a powerful force shoots across the skies into Heimdall, and a voice tells him to stand down. His fight is not with him. As Heimdall stands back up, he tells the being that he knows him. He's observed his exploits across the spaceways. It was thought that he was supposed to be one of honor. And Gladiator floats back down, telling him that he has been called many things, but today he is the Magister of the Shi'ar, and currently on a mission from its gods. While Heimdall battles with the Gladiator, there is another pounding sound, but coming from Jane Foster's door in the residential halls of Asgardia. Jane opens the door to see Cole, and as she thinks that this should be good, she asks him what she can do for him today. Cole says that even though she is supposed to be representing her beloved little mudball, she has been absent from the Congress of Worlds 9 days this month. He has come here to inform her that as of now, she currently has 2 options regarding her stay here. Either rid herself of this pesky cancer, or forfeit her seat in the Congress. If she is to fail to do either of these, or if she finally has the decency to spare them of her pathetic suffering and die, a replacement will come to take her place. As Cole leaves, Jane shouts that this isn't over. The Congress won't stand for. But before she can finish, he cuts her off, telling her that she overestimates the number of friends that she has there. At that moment, a guard runs up to Cole, telling him that they just received word that there has been a disturbance at the Bifrost. Asgardia is under attack. Jane goes back to her room looking at Mjolnir, stating that she knows that it's killing her. But she's glad to see it, because she suddenly feels like hitting something really, really hard. Back at the front gates, Cole runs in shouting for Heimdall to report what has just happened. What sort of enemy would dare to try and face the immovable Heimdall? Heimdall pushes a rock that was on top of him, stating, "The unstoppable kind." Everyone looks up to see Gladiator standing there, and just as they spot him, he radios back to go ahead and open up the Stargate. Pink lights begin to shine as beings start to appear, and Cole calls out to all of the Thunder Guards to ready themselves. They are being invaded! Gladiator tells them, no, you are being conquered. Within only a few moments, Gladiator's forces begin to swarm around Asgardia, laying waste to everything in sight. The warriors of Asgard fight, but their combined strength is no match for the Gladiator's invasion. Cole manages to land a blow on Gladiator's son, Kubark, resulting in Gladiator turning his entire focus on him. But before Gladiator can save his son, a giant bolt of lightning strikes and Jane floats there telling them, whatever this is, it is just now ended. Gladiator looks at her, telling her that she is correct, and then radios back to ready the neurocell. As Kubark is taken away, Gladiator then turns his attacks to Jane Foster Thor, easily knocking her through the buildings. Thor tries to fight back, but just like the others, her strength is nowhere close to the Gladiator's. He picks her up from the rubble, radioing back to the power of the teleporters to engage now, and the same pink light surrounds the two of them, and they vanish. And a short while later, Jane begins to open up her eyes, asking, where are they? Before her is Gladiator kneeling, telling her that this place is Mukron Palace. Now kneel. Kneel before the gods of the Shi'ar, and pray for mercy. She looks right at the two glowing white gods and says that if they were looking for someone to kneel, they have abducted the wrong god. The husband, Cathari, says no. They do believe that they have the right god. And his wife, Shara, tells Jane that her arrogance and discuteness confirms it. Cathari then says that they are Shara and Cathari, the Star Mother and the Father of Light, creators of all space and time, supreme deities for the one true cosmic chosen people. They breathe nebula to lie, weep comets, and speak with the voice of a quadrillion supernovas. And today they will teach her what it truly means to be a god. Jane walks up the steps asking what do they wish to teach her. Just 3 days ago, she was holding a mortal woman as she died of cancer that ravaged her brain, and all she could do was pray. There are so many gods spread across the cosmos, ones who boast about their own majesty and almightiness. Yet, where is that woman now? What heaven does she reside in? She resides in none of them because no god bothered to listen or care. Now, the only thing that she wishes to know now is why is she even here? She has done nothing to the Shi'ar yet. Shara begins to say that they wish to challenge her to a, but before she can finish, Jane walks off telling them, my answer is no. Now, if you'll excuse me, and even if you don't, Gladiator says that she may want to listen. Currently, they have 3 Shi'ar super destroyers aimed at the Earth's orbit, heavily cloaked and fully armed. If she does not answer this challenge, they have orders to obliterate the entire planet. He is sorry to say, but he is honor-bound to, and in a flash, Cathari rushes forward, grabbing Gladiator by the throat, slamming him to the ground, asking, you care to apologize to her? As the two deities begin to beat on the Gladiator, Jane begins to conjure up her lightning, telling them, this ends now, or I will end you. The lightning bends around them, and Shara walks up, punching through it and into Jane. And as Jane starts to get back up, an alien walks up, stating that he is afraid that he is going to have to insist that they follow proper protocol here. The alien then introduces himself as Shadrach, and says that the trial of combat isn't scheduled until round 17. He is here from the omnipotent city to officiate this challenge of the gods. So shall they go ahead and get started? Later, high above the Shi'ar throne world of Chandalar, the first challenge is set to begin. Cathari says that on this world, they are revered and worshipped by 18 billion souls who call this planet home. Here, they will show the true power that a god can wield. Shara shouts that is enough talk. Now they battle as gods do, with the challenge of natural disasters. Jane takes a moment to think about it, and as she starts to understand, she watches a giant tidal wave form on the planet's coast. The citizens below all begin to run and scream, asking for Shara and Cathari to save them. And Jane asks, why would you do this? Cathari tells her that because even after thousands, maybe millions, die for no discernible reason whatsoever, they will still flock to their shrines to worship us. But as the two gods continue to praise themselves, Jane takes it upon herself to try and save everyone. Before the wave can come crashing down, she creates a whirlwind, sucking the water up and placing it into a seat. Shara shouts that is not how you play this game, and Cathari says that she has forfeited. They have won. They have proven that they are the superior gods. Shadrach says, actually, I wouldn't be so sure about that. The people below are all praising Thor now. Meanwhile, at the edge of the Shi'ar-controlled space, the patrol ships begin to pick up something. Their ships are suddenly attacked, and the commander asks what hit them. Are they being attacked by weapons that can pierce shields? And the operator says, actually, it would appear it's something called arrows. And Cull shouts to the archers to ready another volley. For the rest, prepare to board their ships. Back with the trials, though, Shara and Cathari continue to display their power, showing how even if they destroy their own followers, they will still be loved. And each time they attempt to kill the civilians, Jane is there to stop them, shouting that she doesn't care if she has to forfeit the wrong, just end this madness. After one last trial, one where Jane couldn't save the people, she flies up, begging that they stop the plagues, the floods, the brimstone, all of it. Let them finish this with a trial of combat. And Shara laughs, telling her that she truly wishes the honor of facing them, then she must first survive the challenge of ultimate judgment. Jane shouts that if that means that she can end this farce, then Shadrach then stops her, whispering that she doesn't understand. They cannot unleash the ultimate judgment. She wouldn't survive. None of them would. A being then appears before Shara and Cathari. As Jane begins to wonder how she came into this position, we see a few days ago, we see how this thing happened. A being appeared before Shara and Cathari, telling them, not a single god respects you or fears you. Dare I say, most of them don't even know you exist. But there is one who is prayed to. And Loki smiles as he tells them, Thor. Everywhere they pray to Thor. Trust me, for Loki knows. As Loki turns to leave, he tells Meleketh that he knows that he's listening. This was easier than they imagined, so go ahead and open up the Black Bifrost and bring him to Jotunheim. Back in the current times, as Shara and Cathari watch as Thor tries to protect everyone, they laugh, telling her that her score will never catch up to theirs. When suddenly Mjolnir shoots into the chamber, cracking them both in the head, and Jane walks up telling them that there will be no more challenges. With a hammer in hand, she slams it to the ground, splitting it, telling them that she knows not why they hate her, and at this point she no longer cares. They want a challenge, then fine. She challenges them to stop her from beating them senselessly. But before Jane can make her way up the broken stairs, Cathari blasts her away, stating that it is over, they have won. Shara then turns to Shadrach, telling them to do it, unleash the ultimate judgment. Shadrach clutches his pendant, quietly asking why couldn't Gore have killed them instead of his friends, and the pendant responds that this is Omnipotent City. Priority request received. Jane gets back up shouting that she is done with mercy and now she only speaks with thunder. Shara tells her that her thunder will not be enough, and as Jane bashes Shara in the face, she tells her that it is a good thing that she brought Ura then. At the same moment, Gladiator and Kabark are knocked through the walls into the hall, and Kabark says that he can't feel anything, especially his face. Seconds later, Cole crashes in on a longboat, shouting to Shara and Cathari, prepare to make peace with your fears. Jane looks up asking why is he here, and Cole tells her saving her life by the looks of it. She then asks why, and Cole says because no one but me can pry that hammer from your cold dead hands. Lightning begins to swirl around the hammer, and Jane says that there is no one who is going to be prying it from her just yet. At least, not until she has rammed it down the Shi'ar's throats a few hundred times. Cole laughs, telling her that now she is finally talking like an Asgardian, and Cathari tells them, look, you've brought friends. Maybe now this challenge of the gods will actually be challenging. Meanwhile, on a nameless world, somewhere in the darkest corners of the cosmos, a raging fire burns, and from its pits, a hand reaches up, clawing its way out. Down on Earth, a young boy sits on a small island, stating how it may come as a shock, but the people of this planet are unmitigated idiots. The island begins to rumble, and Quentin, the Omega-level telepath, tells the sentient island Krakoa that he knows what he is thinking, literally. This place is just boring. Suddenly, a magical portal opens up and Jane and Kubark step out. Kubark tells Quentin that the universe needs his help, and yes, he's just as surprised by that as he is. Quentin hardly acknowledges them, telling them, right, sounds fun. Now get off my island. Jane asks, this is the savior that you spoke of? We're wasting our time here. Quentin gets up telling the group that he would love to help them with whatever, but he doesn't. So if they could leave, he'll talk to himself in peace. Jane says they can no longer carry on. They should be back stopping the Phoenix from destroying the... But before she could finish, Quentin says, wait. Did you say the Phoenix? Just hours before that, the battle between the Asgardians and the Shi'ar had begun. As they fought, Shadrach stopped everyone, stating that they must not fight. A challenge has been made, and that challenge has a victor. The winner is Thor. Everyone in the room stops, and both Shara and Cathari ask how this is even possible. Thor has forfeited most of the challenges. Shadrach then says yes, Thor did fail miserably in those challenges. She was awarded extra points in the end though, something that the record keepers of Omnipotent City have never recorded before. Thor inspired other gods to fight in her defense. They crossed the cosmos to wage war in her name. Kull begins to state that that is not the case. We came here because we were humiliated. But Sif tells him to shut it or he shall eat her sword. In a fit of rage, Cathari shouts to Gladiator, telling him to alert the battle cruisers that they are in Earth's orbit and have them fire at once. Gladiator tells them, actually, after all I've seen today, I don't think I can do that. Before Cathari could unleash his holy wrath, Shara stops them, stating that none of them deserve to live in their universe. Now kiss her, and end all creation! As the fires of their love burn, Shara and Cathari call upon the great force in the Shi'ar pantheon, the sister of sorts to the gods. Though once she is summoned, only death and destruction follow. She is called Falcon, the world destroyer, the Phoenix. Jane can feel it just as the hammer does. The feeling that the cosmos itself is burning and she must stop it. As Jane flies out to face the Phoenix, she is knocked back into the palace, and Shara and Cathari laugh at her attempts to save everyone. Just as the laughing gets louder, Gladiator punches Cathari, and Shara turns to him, and just before she can do anything, Kubark flies in, punching her! Both of the two gods are now defeated, and everyone wonders what they do now. There is no way of stopping the Phoenix, and Kubark tells everyone that he wouldn't say that. He knows a guy. Now, back in the current time, everyone rides on Cole's longboat, as Jane asks Quentin if he has any experience with the Phoenix Force. Quentin says, yeah, sort of. Well, in the future I will. I'm kind of destined to wield the power of the Phoenix someday, assuming that that future actually comes to fruition. Cole says, never mind the pink-haired will. The Destroyer will deal with this tiny fire pigeon. And a second later, the Destroyer is defeated. Quentin tells Cole, as metal as the Destroyer sounds, nothing can destroy the Phoenix because the Phoenix is destruction. Jane grips her hammer, telling them that they shall die trying. And Quentin says, most likely. But hey, at least I'm not bored now. Everyone jumps on the longboat in an effort to try and hurt the Phoenix, but one does not simply hurt something like that. Jane shouts that her hammer blows have no effect. How do they even fight a creature of living fire? Quentin fires his psychic shotgun, telling her, you don't. Even I can't get through to it. The only way we can stop it is to commune with it directly. At that moment, Jane sees the world turning white and her without her hammer. As Jane asks where is she, the Phoenix tells her, that is a foolish question. But then again, you are one of the most foolish creatures that I have ever encountered. The Phoenix goes on. I have brought you here in your dying little form to have a conversation and make you an offer. One to ease you of your many heavy burdens. Well, of one very particularly heavy burden. Jane thinks about it and asks her hammer. The Phoenix wants the hammer. The Phoenix tells her, if you wish to save the other gods from my flames, then all you must do is hand over Mjolnir. Just holding it is killing you, is it not? Allow that burden to be lifted. Jane says, wait. She wants to eat the hammer, doesn't she? Consume the power of the god Tempest, because she is afraid of it. Then it would seem that the Phoenix is wrong about her being a fool. Phoenix punches Jane, shouting that she was trying to help her. She offered her a chance to die with dignity. There shall be not another chance, only suffering. At that moment, the hammer appears in her hand, and Jane swings it, asking if you want to eat it, you can take a bite. And back outside, the Phoenix screams in pain as Quentin asks how she did it. Then says, you know what? Never mind. Just do whatever that was again. Jane gathers all of Mjolnir's strength, stating that she will not die on her bed. She will die like a god. And while Jane releases the powers of the space hurricane, Quentin's vision changes and he enters the white world. The Phoenix looks at him, asking, what do you think you're doing here? It is not time for you yet. You are not ready to be my avatar. Quentin tells her, no, definitely not, which is why what I'm about to do is going to really piss off a whole bunch of people. And that's just one reason you're gonna want to say yes. Outside, Jane continues to struggle with the flames, telling the hammer to hold strong. The Phoenix fears them. The voice then tells her, nay, it is not about the hammer or the axe. It is about Thor. Thor Odinson rides his goat down, telling them that just one Thor was a pain in her fiery hindquarters. Good luck dealing with two. Thor releases a storm, and between the two of them, they begin to tear the Phoenix apart. As the storm begins to take over, Thor notices that there is something else here. Another voice telling him, yeah, you might say that. Quentin appears before them, imbued with the power of the Phoenix, and as the cosmos was saved from total destruction, the Asgardian gods have returned to what they do best, celebrating their victory. However, the celebration was short-lived, as the time for the Congress of Worlds to meet comes. Cole tells Jane that her time is up. He has given her until the end of the week to get rid of her cancer or resign. Volstagg tries to tell Jane that it's okay, but Jane says actually, Cole's right. Her health has begun to affect her job performance, and her condition is not improving. Though she is resigning, a replacement has already been found, and they will find that she is well prepared for the job. She would like to introduce the Congress of Worlds to Rosalind Solomon, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Rosalind flies down, telling them, sure, she'll be one of their space senators. And as Jane leaves the Congress, she finds Thor Odinson beating on the doors of his mother's chambers. Jane tells him that Odin hasn't allowed anyone inside for weeks, and Odinson shouts that he was not asking for permission. Is she even still alive in there? Jane says that his mother was alive when they last saw her, though it was in a comatose state. Thor then asks, was it truly Loki who stabbed her? But before even allowing Jane to answer, he turns back, beating on the door. She stops him, telling him to look. She's got a story of her own that she needs to tell him. Something that she should have told him before. He might want to sit down for this one. And just as the threat of the Phoenix has subsided for now, there is still something else coming. The Mangog. The ultimate judgment. They say once awoken, nothing that lives, nothing that breathes, can hope to stay its wrath. And they are right. While one threat has been stopped, another arises within the 10 realms. War is coming, and it has been slowly affecting each of the World Tree's branches. Alfheim is one of the realms recently hit, forcing the Light Elves to take refuge in Nidalvire, the land of the dwarves. Among the Skolheim Mountains, the portal opens up as the senators of Solomon, Milkmane, and Volstagg step out. A voice calls to them, telling them that their king, Etri, regrets that he could not make it as he is busy working in the forges. The dwarf before them is Stonefoot, the son of Leadbeard, son of Wartknuckle. He will be their guide in these troubling times. As Stonefoot begins to lead the group to camp, Volstagg says that he thought that there would be a welcoming feast, and Stonefoot tells him that dwarves do not bother with such nonsense. After a few more minutes of walking, Stonefoot says that they are here. For the first time in many worm turns, the war has come to Nidalvire. War in the form of the Light Elf refugees. Everyone looks around to see the shabby tents filling the entire chasm, all with wounded elves of all ages. Stonefoot begins walking down, stating that the dwarves honor ancient treaties and take in the Light Elves, but they are struggling to feed them all. Nidalvire is not a land of the plenty. Unless they are referring to the ore, there is plenty of ore. For years, the dwarves traded with Elfheim for food, but Meleketh burned all of the fields, leaving them little to eat. Milkmane shouts that the other realms must know of what is happening to his people. Meleketh must answer for his war crimes. Rosalind adds that the Congress of Worlds will do all that they can to help these elves as soon as possible. If they won't, Shield will. That she can promise. But while Rosalind and Milkmane talk with Stonefoot, some of the children run up to Volstagg asking if he's going to eat the entire sack full of food. Volstagg says, well, I did have a rather large breakfast now that I think about it. So how about you help yourselves to what I have left over? The kids all begin to eat, and Volstagg tells them, consider this an appetizer. I'll have my wife Grunrun make some goose egg omelets for all of you and your families. At that moment, everyone hears a horn blaring and a sudden blast of fire hits the campsite. Milkmane screams that his people are defenseless. What are they going to? But Rosalind stops him, calling out to Heimdall to activate the Bifrost and get them all out of here. Another blast hits the ground, knocking everyone away, and Volstagg gets up as he sees the tents on fire. The children run up with tears in their eyes, telling him, they are sorry. They lost all the food. Please don't be mad at them. Volstagg tells them, do not worry. And then he calls for Heimdall to get them out of there. With no answer, the children ask, who are you talking to? And Volstagg says, I have a friend in the sky. I fear that the smoke is blocking his vision is all. Meanwhile, at old Asgard, Jane steps up to the Bifrost, stating that she knows that he's there. And he's angry. Please allow her to explain. Odinson asks, what is there to explain, Senator Foster? Or should I call you Mighty Thor? Jane says that she wanted to tell him how he deserved to know and hear it from her while she's still alive. And Odinson tells her, I've heard it, now you can go. Before leaving, Jane looks at the ultimate Thor's Mjolnir, stating that she's heard about what he went through to keep it safe from Thanos and the Collector. Why didn't he try lifting it? If you're curious about that story, it's the Unworthy Thor storyline. And as she says that she's afraid of not lifting the hammer, but afraid of the next time that she does, she won't be able to put it down. The cancer is spreading with no signs of slowing down. Being a part of the Congress of Worlds has given her some purpose as Jane Foster, and now that she doesn't have a seat anymore, Jane Foster will be forgotten. If she picks up the hammer, she would stay the goddess of thunder forever. She's afraid of losing her. But before she could finish, there's a loud explosion, and Mjolnir slams down into the ground. Jane looks at the hammer, stating that if it's here, there must be trouble in Nidalvire. She turns to run to the hammer, but as she does, her frail body collapses and her vision begins to fade. Back at the land of the doors, Volstagg carries the children, telling them that they have nothing to fear. Soon they will be in his hold in Asgardia for omelets and a nice long nap. But as Volstagg continues on, there's another explosion, and that's when he sees the Firefly Rider loaded with maggot bombs. The rider shouts out, all hail the Queen of Cinders, and activates the bomb, and the blast washes over the area, burning everything in its path, even Godflesh. The only thing there to protect from the Muspelheim fire is the blood of the fire goblins. As Rosalind runs up to check on Volstagg, she finds him covered head to toe in fire goblin blood and no children. Later, at old Asgard, Volstagg walks out of the Bifrost, a shell of the former man that he was. The things that he has seen. He has not slept, nor has he closed his eyes or even eaten a bite. He hasn't heard the voice of his wife or his friends or his children. He watches their lips move, but no sounds come out. For all he can hear is the roar of the fire and something calling to him. A hammer. And as Volstagg puts his hand on the ultimate Thor's hammer, he knows no storm will put out this blaze. Only blood. Behold, War Thor! Back in the land of the dwarves, Cinder's riders continue to lay waste upon the realm when they suddenly see a storm brewing, and the riders shout, all hail the Queen of Cinders, all hail! But then a loud booming sound of thunder can be heard, and the crack of lightning shoots down. The riders look up to see War Thor standing before them, lightning striking all around him. The clouds begin to twist and the destructive force of lightning hits the riders, striking them all to the ground in seconds. A giant firebug roars, and Volstagg asks, "You wanted war. I will be your war." Volstagg throws the hammer and it shoots through the air and into the giant bug. As the hammer returns to War Thor's hands, he jumps into a group of riders stating that it will be the last war that you have ever fought. Volstagg was known as the god whose hunger was legendary. His hunger could never be sated, no matter how much he consumed. The War Thor hungers as well, and the more that he feasts on blood and the wails of his enemies, the hungrier he grows. As Volstagg continues on his rampage, he is hit in the back with a green blast, and a voice asks, "What do we have here?" And the enchantress states, "Another Thor?" Ulrich says that at least this one has a beard. "We should just kill him anyway." The enchantress releases another blast, but Volstagg deflects it. He gets back up, throwing his hammer at the enchantress, and Ulrich charges in, asking, "How well can you block fists?" As Ulrich punches into Volstagg's head, there's a loud crack, and Ulrich pulls back, asking, "How did you crack my knuckle duster? What in the hell is that beard made of?" Volstagg then punches him again, telling him, "It is made of rage!" Volstagg picks Ulrich up, and he begins to beat on him, stating, "I have made of war, little troll, all because of monsters like you." Through the blood in his mouth, Ulrich says, "The one you want is Cinder." And Volstagg tells him, "I know, her time will come. But right now, King Ulrich, it is your time." Ulrich manages to free himself, shouting that his legions of trolls will tear that blasted beard off. And Volstagg tells him, "Very well. My fists will have their fill of your wretched blood. Now the hammer will feed." Volstagg lifts the hammer above his head, and as he brings it down, Enchantress calls out to the Black Bifrost to warp both her and Ulrich out of here. As the sounds of smoldering bodies begin to fill the air, Volstagg says that they felled an entire army today. "But I, Mjolnir, this is only the beginning. They must." And at that moment, Volstagg realizes what he's done, and he says, "This isn't who I am. Who am I? I am." Lightning begins to strike the ground, and Volstagg shouts, "I am the Thor of War, the god of the Bloodstorm." Over in Asgardia, Odin's son rushes Jane to the Hall of Medicine to get help, but Jane tells him no magic. Odin's son says that she is dying. He can feel her life draining as they speak. He doesn't care what it takes to save her. They will. And then Odin's son notices the hammer floating behind them. She says to give her the hammer, and Odin's son shouts for the hammer to stay away. It is they who are the cause for Jane's suffering. Jane reaches for the hammer, and Odin's son tells her not to. Her fingers will not touch the hammer. And in a flash of light, Jane transforms. "There is trouble in the realms," the hammer whispers to her, and Jane answers without a second thought. That is why she is worthy to be Thor, the goddess of thunder, and why she will soon be dead. Meanwhile, down in the depths of Muspelheim, a storm begins to brew over the fiery land. The fire goblins look to the skies to see some strange liquid falling upon them. And one goblin says that he thinks he's heard of this before. He believes that they call it rain. Moments later, giant waves of water come crashing down through their city, and it is then marked as the first time in living memory that rain came to the Firelands. So much rain that the goblin nests were flooded, and with the rain came thunder, and with the thunder came Thor. Except this time, it wasn't the Thor that you've come to know and love, it was the War Thor. A Thor that holds a hammer not known in this land. A Thor who is here to kill everyone, to bring back the vengeance of everyone that has been lost in war. Volstagg is the War Thor, and Volstagg walks out over the once burning lava, calling out to Cinder that there is a storm coming that will end all fire forever. Suddenly the ground shifts, and as the rocks begin to part, Cinder appears before Volstagg, telling him that she thinks not. The flames of Muspelheim are the fires of creation and of death for him and his kind. Cinder charges at Volstagg, the War Thor, forcing him to block, but the force from her knocks him away. Cinder lunges in, slamming her sword down on Volstagg's hammer, stating that to be the Queen of Cinders, she had to learn to paint with fire. He will be her masterpiece. As Cinder opens up her mouth, a scorching wave of fire blasts into Volstagg, knocking him to the ground, and his hammer into the lava. Volstagg reaches for his weapon, and as he looks into the lava, all he can see are the faces of the children that he is here to protect. Before Volstagg can grab the hammer, Cinder picks him up with her tail and holds him under the lava, shouting that he will have his lungs filled with lava. Volstagg holds out his hand, and as he does, the ultimate Mjolnir shoots by into Cinder's back. Volstagg pulls himself up, gasping for air, and then the fire-breathing sharks swim by, biting away at the god's body. The fire goblins run up asking if they should fetch the invader's charred body. And Cinder laughs, telling him, "No, we will let the sharks have their fun." But just before Cinder could continue talking, Volstagg leaps from the lava, bashing Cinder with one of her own sharks. The goblins rush in to swarm over Volstagg, and once he's held in place, Cinder swings her sword, ripping through both the goblins and Volstagg. She picks Volstagg up, stating that she will spread her fire oh so slowly over his body, roasting his tender flesh. His screams will turn to ash in his charred mouth. What does the little Thor say to that? The voice then calls out to Cinder, telling her that that isn't Thor. And some would say neither is she. Now let him go. Jane floats down, holding the proper hammer of this universe. And Cinder tells her that she may call herself whatever she wants. All they are to her are unwelcomed guests in her realm. Jane then tells her, if that's so, let them both leave here But Volstagg struggles, shouting that he isn't leaving until she pays for what she did. And Cinder says to Jane, see, he doesn't wish to leave. Jane throws her hammer down, bouncing it off the nearby goblins, and then punches Cinder to the ground, asking if what he says is not true. She attacked Nidalvire and murdered children. Cinder gets back up, stating that no one has dared lay a hand on her since her father, and she will never lay hands on anything again once those hands are removed. Jane calls back to her hammer, telling her that she will find that rather difficult when she is filled with Uru. But before Jane can swing, Volstagg stands up, telling her, it is not your hammer that Cinder should fear. The fury of the dead universe rages within this hammer, and with it I will smite this entire realm into oblivion. To end this war, I must first end all of them. Death to the fire realm! The rock pillars begin to shake and crumble, and on one of them, a fire goblin child cries for its mother. As the young goblin is flung into the air, Jane catches him, telling him to be calm. This will all be over soon, hopefully. She then spins her hammer and opens up a portal, and in a blink of an eye, Volstagg and her are teleported into nothingness. Volstagg looks around asking, what did you just do? And Jane tells him that her hammer transported them to the yawning void, where he can do no more harm. Volstagg then asks, you protect the demons of the fire realm? What sort of Thor are you? Rather than answer, Jane asks, what kind of Thor are you? You've terrorized innocent children in order to strike against their queen? That is not the way of Thor. Now stand aside. Volstagg shouts, that is why I am here. You are filled with nothing but words, and words will not end wars. Now stand aside, woman, or the war Thor will end you as well. As the two gods begin to clash, their thunderous blows can be heard ringing throughout the realms, over the skies of Vanaheim, all the way over in Niflheim. And just as Volstagg gets ready to deliver the final blow to Jane, her hammer flies by, hitting Volstagg in the back, loosening his grip on his hammer. From her defensive bubble, Jane reaches out to the otherworldly hammer, the ultimate universe hammer, stating that his storms are paltry, just like her grasp on sanity. She grips onto Volstagg's hammer and then calls back hers. Volstagg's eyes widen as he looks at Jane. Her eyes sparked with lightning and her body filled with rage. The very air around her trembling. But before Jane can swing, she looks at the other Mjolnir, stating this should not be here. Volstagg then asks why she lifted it, and does she have the guts to truly bring the storm? The war will not be won with thunder, but with blood. Only the blood puts out the fire, and if she wishes to stop him, she must become the raging blood storm. Do you hear? The hammer swings, cracking Volstagg in the face, and Jane shouts, asking, do you think that she does not understand war? You should try battling cancer. With both hammers in hand, Jane slams the two together, and the realms see another streak of light. The force from the hit knocks Volstagg across the realms, all the way down to the dark fairy realm. Volstagg then begins to get up, looking around, stating that this is the birthplace of Melikath. This was no mere accident. She flies down, and Volstagg tells her that the hammer brought them here on purpose. His hammer knows that these dark elves must be punished, just like Cinder and her demons. They could do it together. They could end this war in a day. Jane begins to feel the power of the second hammer, stating that this hammer is angry, so untethered. All it wants her to do is rage. Volstagg shouts, then do it. Let the rage out! As Jane looks at the scared elf, she says no. She's seen his rage in all of its ugliness. They have enough wars, and with that, enough Mjolnirs. She throws the hammer into the sky, but Volstagg calls it back, stating, no. Without rage, you would never truly be worthy of it. Lightning strikes down on Volstagg, and he yells to let him show her how a real Thor makes war! And say fare thee well to the dark fairy realm. The ground begins to shake and rip, sucking the elves into their cracks. And Jane shouts that they have to do better than this. Jane tries to hit Volstagg, but as he catches the hammer with his, he headbutts her, pushing her back. She yells, "Damn it all to hell! Who are you, you mad bastard? Why are you doing this?" And Volstagg shouts that he is the god of the Bloodstorm. He is the War Thor, and this is... And just then, a ram charges into Volstagg, and Odinson looks down, stating, "You are a great blundering fool and also a friend. Volstagg, lay down your hammer and end this madness." Jane looks at him. "Volstagg?" And Rosalind runs up, stating that it is true. Volstagg is the War Thor. As Odinson and Volstagg begin to exchange blows, Jane says that it can't be possible. Volstagg is one of the kindest souls she's ever met. Rosalind goes on, stating that Volstagg's eyes were open to the horrors of war. She's afraid that that's all he can see now. And Jane tells her no. He has forgotten himself. She knows how to win the war of Thors. And then a thunk can be heard as Jane's hammer hits the ground. She calls out to Volstagg in her human form, Jane Foster, telling him that she understands his anger and pain, but this is not the answer. "Remember who you are. You are such a loving and merciful God." Volstagg tells her, "I am War Thor, and if you come any closer, I will smash you just as I did Odinson." She continues walking, stating that he is a devoted husband, loving father, esteemed senator of the Congress of Worlds, a friend. "It's time for us to go home." Rosalind looks at Volstagg's hammer, asking what they should do with this. And Odinson yells out, telling them to return it to old Asgard. "No one wants you here." Rosalind says that she's pretty sure it's a hammer and not a dog. This really isn't going to. But just then the hammer flies into the sky. And Rosalind says that she will never understand Thor's and their hammers. Just as one war ends, another begins. And the War of Thors comes to a close, but it does mark the beginning of the War of the Realms. The forces of Vanaheim, Niflheim, and Heaven will stand ready to fight their battles as Roxxon, Cinder, and Malekith all execute their attacks at the same time. It's time for us to come to the end of Jane Foster. As the past is shown to him, Odinson sees himself in his former glory during a time when he once held Mjolnir. Karnilla, the queen of the Norns, asks what does he see, and Odinson says that what he sees is something that pains him to the very depths of his soul. Karnilla tells him that he gazes upon the golden sap of Yggdrasil, the lifeblood of the world tree itself. Such visions are not for the faint of heart or the unworthy. Odinson looks away, and he states that it is not for him to see them. But he did not come here to be humiliated. He came here because someone needed help. She says that it is not her who needs help, but someone that she is bound to protect. The Norns are in the greatest of danger. Someone seeks to slay the fates themselves. If the Norns, the twiners of fate, were to fall, then destiny dies with them. Malekith and his dark cabal would be free to forge their own futures, no matter the consequences. Ulik and his trolls have already tried, and her soldiers have managed to repel them. Odinson tells her that no harm shall befall the Norns while the Thunder God has blood pumping through his chest. But just as he says that, the warning horn can be heard, and Karnilla says that is the Century's horn. They are facing another attack. Odinson grabs Jornbjorn and yells to have the guards get the Norns to safety. He'll deal with the trolls. Karnilla tells him that it is not just the trolls this time. Their time grows short, and if today they must bleed, then let them do so as Norns. The Norns bleed stories. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Volstagg awaits to be tried for what he did while wielding the Warhammer. As everyone wonders if Volstagg was even capable of hurting a fly, there's a rumble of thunder that fills the halls. Everyone tries to figure out what it is, and Volstagg tells them that they should all run. Then something comes crashing down through the ceiling and before Volstagg. The ultimate Thor's Mjolnir sits there, pulsing with lightning, and Volstagg reaches forward as everyone tries to pull him away. As a single finger touches that Warhammer, the War Thor, god of the Bloodstorm, is once again born. Back at the Norn Keep, Odinson fights back the forces with all of the strength that he has while allowing Karnilla and her Norns to escape. As Karnilla looks at the threads of fate, she tells her guards that they should leave here before their lives are claimed. The guards ask what about her, and Karnilla tells them that she is the queen of the Norns. It is time that she controlled her own fate for once, and then takes a dagger cutting the threads. Outside, while Malekith's forces push closer to her chambers, green threads start reaching out, grabbing the attackers and strangling them. She tells them that there is only one Norn in Norn Keep today, and she now holds all of their fates in her hands. She sees where the threads led them, and all of the realms. For all of the gods and for all of the Thors. The two giants hack away at the support for her chambers, and she continues stating that the War of the Realms, the battle for the stones, the final host, the Mangog. Gods help them. Death. She sees the most horrible of deaths coming for them. But before she can finish, the roots give way and Norn Keep comes crashing down. Odinson rushes over to move the stone and the debris aside, calling out to Carnilla asking if she's okay, and as he reaches for her, he sees her body broken. She tells him that she saw all of the threads of fate, all of them, and she saw death. She saw the death that is coming for her. She did her best to twine the tale. She bled like a Norn, and her death is not a death that he should fear. It is the death of Jane. Don't let Jane. But back across the cosmos, the Warhammer flies Volstagg towards the ruins of old Asgard, and he asks why is it taking him here. They must go to Muspelheim or Svartalfheim, not here. But just then Volstagg is hit by a flying goat, and he's shot down to the ruins with a force so great it levels the grounds. He gets back up looking at Tooth Gnasher, asking Odinson if he left him to guard the hammer. However, he cannot put the hammer back down. It wants him to end this war, and he wants to. He never asked for this. He never asked to be a Thor. But just as Volstagg finishes, there's a second explosion and Tooth Gnasher growls, charging toward whatever landed. As he gets closer, a hand reaches out, grabbing Tooth Gnasher by the neck, pulling him into the smoke. Volstagg says, by the gods, it can't be, and a voice asks, "You call yourself Thor? You are no Thor that I have ever seen." Through the smoke, Mangog walks out holding Tooth Gnasher's body, telling Volstagg, "At long last, Mangog has returned to Asgard with the strength of 1 billion beings, a rage unquenchable, which means the time for the ultimate judgment has come." As Mangog lunges for Volstagg, he tells them, "And we shall start with you. But rest assured, you will not be the last." As Mangog starts to run, Volstagg takes his hammer and he throws it, but the massive fist of Mangog punches into it, sending it flying back into Volstagg's gut. As Volstagg finds his footing and he holds steady, Mangog stops before him, telling him, "I do not know you, but you smell of an Asgardian. You are a god, and that is all I need to know." Mangog then grabs Volstagg by the neck, throwing him across the ruins towards the nearby buildings. He starts to pick himself back up, telling him, "I am not just a god. I am the War Thor, the god of the Bloodstorm. Have at thee." Lightning begins to strike the ground, creating a storm, but through it, Mangog walks. As he gets to Volstagg, he punches into Volstagg's head, and the storms stop. As Mangog punches over and over, he says that this is what happens to people who send their prayers to the ether. The gods don't answer. While devout men die, while these gods do nothing, the Mangog rises. And when divine gardeners neglect their orchards, and entire worlds wither and die, the Mangog rages. When they sin and call it holy, I swell with power, and then I cumber them with some sins of my own. As Mangog grabs Volstagg again, Volstagg takes his hammer, cracking it across Mangog's face, telling him, "You are no match for the Warhammer." Mangog steps back, spitting out a broken tooth onto Volstagg's head, telling him, "Mangog does not fear hammers, or the cowardly gods who hide behind them." As Mangog jumps forward, Volstagg thrusts his hammer into Mangog's mouth, telling him, "Then you can taste the rage of an entire dead universe." The lightning comes crashing down, lighting all of Asgard, and even then, Mangog smacks Volstagg away. He begins to laugh, bloated from all of the lightning in his stomach, and he tells him, "Tastes like another dead god." And he releases the power back at Volstagg. The blast burns everything around it, and Volstagg starts to get back up, telling him, "This is impossible." Mangog walks up, hitting Volstagg back into the ground, telling him, "I eat the impossible. I feed with the hunger of 1 billion beings, and yet I still hunger." With all of that rage, Mangog beats Volstagg over and over again, punch after brutal punch, breaking and spilling the blood of the War Thor. Mangog then howls in triumph, and Volstagg reaches for his hammer as it slowly slides towards him. He grabs his hands around the handle, and Mangog grabs him, telling him, "You may fight with the power of an entire murdered universe, but my rage comes from the inside, while Thor's come from this. Mangog will never break, but the same could not be said for hammers." He lifts up both Volstagg and the hammer in his hand, and he squeezes down, crushing both the hammer and Volstagg's arm. As he lets go, pieces of the Warhammer crumble before him, and Mangog tells him, "No more hammer, no more Thor." And with one last punch, he launches Volstagg to the edges of Asgard. Volstagg barely manages to grab onto the ledge before falling off into space, and Mangog walks up to him, asking him, "Where are they? Where are the Asgardians?" Volstagg tells him that they're all gone, and Mangog steps down onto Volstagg's remaining hands, telling him, "You still have a few bones I can break, now tell me." Volstagg screams in pain as Mangog steps down, and then a voice says, "It's called Asgardia." Mangog looks back, and Meliketh tells him, "They're all there, all of your favorites, including the All-Father Odin himself, all waiting for you." Mangog turns, asking, "Is he?" And Meliketh smiles, stating, "Not a god, thus not of your concern." Mangog grunts, telling him, "Then you shall not get in my way," and he leaps off as Meliketh says, "I wouldn't dream of it." But once he leaves, Volstagg calls out for help, and Meliketh looks over the ledge to see Volstagg returning to his normal self. Meliketh laughs, telling him, "Hello, Warthor. Is it war that you are looking for?" And he holds out a knife over Volstagg's hand. After dropping the knife into Volstagg's hand, Meliketh watches as Volstagg's body drifts up into space, and he says, "Godspeed, Mangog, and goodbye, Mighty Thor." Now back on Midgard, Jane begins to think about all the good that she is doing. And the forests of Vanaheim, protecting it from the hulked out Roxxon super soldiers. And Jotunheim, fighting back the storm and mountain giants, so many other things. But instead, she is sitting on Midgard, arm wrestling Hercules of Olympus. Herc asks if she's ready to surrender, and Jane tells him that she is ready to tear his little arm from his stubborn torso. For lives depend on it. The two begin, and Jean-Bjorn is thrown between them, and Odinson then asks, "Please do not get Hercules started on his labors. He can go on for centuries about those. We do not have the time. There is no point in measuring egos against Hercules, believe me." Jane tells him that this isn't about egos. This is about Olympus doing the right thing. Herc says that trying to convince Zeus to join their cause will not be an easy task. Sky Father Zeus is just as stubborn as the one-eyed All-Father of Asgard. Herc then grabs Jane's hand and kisses it, stating that there will be at least one god of Olympus there fighting by her side. His name is Hercules, Prince of Power. Later in the healing ward of Asgard, on the bedside of the healing Volstagg, Odinson tells Jane that she found him like this after becoming Warthor again. Jane then asks, "You're telling me that something did this to Volstagg while he was empowered as Warthor?" And Odinson says, "Aye. It's the same thing that had the power to rend his hammer to pieces and to tear Tooth Gnasher's head from his body. The thing that we face is something that Carnilla spoke of with her dying words. So tell me, have you heard of Mangog?" Jane says that it's something that she's only heard of in whispers. She knows that it's something that even the gods fear. Odinson tells her, "Aye, and with good reason. On previous bouts, it has defeated the armies of Asgard all by itself, and it almost brought about Ragnarok through the sheer force of its will. Even the all-seeing Heimdall can't find it, but the Mangog is coming. The gods must be ready." Jane says that when it comes, they will face it together. But until then, there is a war raging across the realms, and Odinson stops her, stating, "Not for you, there isn't. The only war that you should be facing is the one raging inside of you." Jane tells him that he shall unhand her, or he will lose his only hand. Odinson then says that he fights for the life of his mortal friend Jane Foster. Does the Goddess of Thunder still remember her? Last time I saw her, she was in desperate need of medical care. Jane looks down at Mjolnir, and after a moment of hesitation says that there's no time to be sick. This is why the hammer has chosen her. Odinson tells her that it doesn't mean that she has to let it kill her. You may not be afraid to die, but you must not be afraid to live. One god with a hammer will not defeat Meliketh's army, not alone. The world needs a Thor, and you have been one hell of a Thor. You have faced every threat possible. The world needs more than just a Thor, it needs you as Jane Foster. Jane looks at her hammer and tells him, and she throws the hammer into space. She then says that he is right. Jane Foster does have something left to do. A few moments later, in front of Odin's chamber, Jane is beating on the giant doors calling for him. She knows that he can hear her in there. It is time that he does something about the war that they are facing, and if he won't face it, it is time that they had a new All-Father. Or better yet, All-Mother. The War of Realms is not just a war for the elves or the giants, it is a war that affects all of them. As the crowd starts to form, a voice from behind yells to Jane that she and all of these people are under arrest for sedition. Jane tells Kull that it is not sedition, it is common sense, something which too bad he is not the god of. Kull tells her that she is not a senator anymore, she is just a half-dead mortal who does not belong here. Now leave before she is treated as an enemy of Asgard. As the crowd becomes unruly, arguing back against Kull, the doors to Odin's chamber slam open, and he shouts, "Enough!" Odin steps out asking, "Are you gods or petulant children? Either way, cease your wretchling mewling, for the All-Father Odin has returned. Returning long enough to deal with the mess that my brother has made of Asgardia. A god who cannot deal with one troublesome mortal does not deserve to be a god." Jane tells him that she is not the trouble here. His stubbornness will doom every god in. But Odin speaks over her, telling her, "I should never have sent my son into Midgard. I thought stripping him of his powers and leaving him to wallow among the humans would humble him. But the humans are just arrogant. And you are the most arrogant of all. Then a voice calls out from the chamber stating that Jane Foster speaks true. The realms deserve better gods. They are all unworthy. Everyone stops to see Lady Freya weakly walking out, and she continues stating that Jane Foster's words have stirred something inside of her. Now is not the time for slumber, for the War of Realms has begun. They must prove themselves worthy to be called gods. They must be worthy of her, of the bold and valiant Lady Jane of Midgard. Come stand beside her so that they might. But as everyone looks back, they see Jane has collapsed to the floor. Outside of the Golden Gate, Heimdall says that so it begins. Over the eons, these all-seeing eyes have watched worlds crumble and galaxies burn. But what comes next will be difficult to watch. Suddenly there's a loud thoom and Mangog lands before him stating, "Asgard at last! Tell all of the gods in heaven that Mangog has arrived to send them to hell!" A short while after the arrival of Mangog, Jane begins to wake back up and she asks where is she. She looks around seeing herself in a hospital bed, and Odinson tells her that she is not on Asgard anymore. She is where she belongs. Jane asks what happened, and Odinson says that she collapsed. He had alerted Senator Solomon, and Rosalind tells her that she called in everyone that she could. Jane turns and sees Sam Wilson and Stephen Strange, and Sam tells her that she needs to listen to what they have to say. Dr. Strange tells her that she should consider this an intervention. On behalf of the people who love and respect her, they refuse to watch her murder herself. Odinson then says that he knows that it is difficult to let go of being Thor. In the name of all the gods does he know that. But that is what must happen here today. Jane asks what of Asgard, and Rosalind stops her, stating that it is not of her concern. Kicking Cancer's ass is all that she needs to worry about. Believe her when she says that Asgard will be fine without her. Meanwhile, back at the Rainbow Bridge, Heimdall thrusts his sword into Mangog's chest, telling him, "Mangog will be stopped, so swears Heimdall, the all-seeing." Mangog grabs Heimdall, slamming him into the ground, breaking his sword in half. He then picks him back up, and part of the sword is still sticking out of his chest as he tells Heimdall, "You see very little for an all-seeing god. Tell me, mighty Heimdall, did you foresee this?" Mangog pushes Heimdall's head against the broken blade. Also at this time, Kull runs out with his guards, shouting to trigger the Bifrost and send the beast somewhere. Mangog begins punching into the bridge, asking, "Did you think that you could just send me away? Mangog isn't going anywhere, and neither are you." With one last hit, the bridge begins to shatter. Back on Earth, though, Dr. Strange begins to examine Jane, and she tells him, "Remember, no magical cures." And Dr. Strange says that he understands. Once Dr. Strange is done, he says that when this all began a year ago, her initial cancer treatments were showing positivity. It was stage 1 breast cancer, but the treatments were removing the cancerous cells. And then something changed. Suddenly, the treatments were ineffective and the cancer metastasized. It went from stage 1 to stage 2 and then to 4. What changed is that she found a magic hammer on a moon. The more she saved the worlds as goddess of thunder, the more she was killing herself. The magical transformation purges the chemotherapy from her system while leaving behind the actual cancer itself. If she was to transform even one more time, Dr. Foster, are you even listening? Jane's eyes begin to stare at the hammer, which is floating in the room with them. Odinson shouts at the hammer, telling it to go away. "Can't you see that you're killing her?" And Jane, while looking at the hammer, quietly says that she can hear it. The Mangog has come. Back on Asgard, Freya watches the destruction, stating that no matter how many soldiers they throw at it, the Mangog will keep coming. They must release their greatest weapon. They must release the Destroyer. Moments later, back at the gate, Mangog walks through yelling for Odin to stop hiding behind his pathetic armies and face your demise. Freya, through the Destroyer, tells him the All-Father isn't listening. It's the All-Mother who will be his Destroyer today. With that, she releases the Destroyer's destructive blast right into his chest. But while the fight for Asgard continues, Jane gets up from her bed, walking over to the hammer. Dr. Strange tells her that if she is to change even one more time, there will be no coming back. Jane Foster will die. Sam yells that they have to keep the hammer away from her, and Rosalind says no. It's her life. Jane's the one who will make the decision to live or die. Back on Asgard, the fire spreads as the Destroyer tries to defeat Mangog. But then he grabs a hold of the Destroyer, stating that he can see the weakness in this. The goddess who controls it is weary. "Recovering from a great illness, you should have stayed in bed." He bites down on the head of the Destroyer, ripping it off of its own shoulders. Mangog then throws the Destroyer's body into the building, shouting to Odin that he is coming for him. He will come at him just as he came to slew the race that gave birth to him. He will slay every god on Asgard and drown them in their own blood. Back in the hospital, though, Jane reaches for the hammer and then stops. She looks at Odinson, telling him that they are all soldiers now, soldiers in the War of the Realms. Make sure that their side doesn't lose. Odin, however, sits on his throne, imagining what the sight will look like the moment that Mangog makes his way in. He thinks even gods don't live forever. Even all fathers die. If today is that day, then so be it, though I have one regret. I wish at long last that I could have told my son, my heir, what he truly. But Odinson stops him, telling him, that'll have to wait, old man. Right now we have a realm to preserve, gods to save and Mangog to kill. We'll do so with all of the thunder blood in our bodies and all of the boar-damned hell that we can muster. Mangog begins to claw his way into the throne room, yelling, at last! Now falls Asgard. Now death comes for the gods. Mangog quickly grabs Odinson, slamming him into the ground, and then he punches Odin away as he tries to stab into him. Odinson then brings down his axe, and as he gets close, Mangog smacks him so hard that he is launched into space. Odin gets back up, and as he looks up, he sees Mangog holding his broken throne over his head, telling him, your kingdom lies in ruins, and now so will you. Mangog throws the throne down onto Odin's body, and then Odin's son, riding Toothgrinder, flies back and shouting for his father. Toothgrinder rams into Mangog, sending him down into the lower levels, but back up top, Odin begins to rise. He says that Mangog doesn't hit as hard as he remembers. Barely felt that. He was a fool to give in to fear. If death comes to Asgard, so be it, and what a glorious death it shall be. As Odin and his son battle against Mangog, all Freya can do is watch as the walls of their once great city fall. Freya talks to herself, stating that there must be something that can be done, something that can stop Mangog. But a voice tells her that all she can do is run, nothing will stop him. Mother. Freya turns back to see Loki, and he says that he's here to help with that. He is the Sorcerer Supreme of Midgard now. He can send her far enough away from Mangog, and without saying a word, Freya slaps him across the face, stating, how dare you show your face around here? Come to bury another poisoned dagger into my back? Loki looks at her. Mother. And Freya yells, you lost all rights to call me that. He sincerely looks at Freya, asking, if I wanted that dagger to kill you, do you think that you would be standing here instead of Valhalla? Meleketh wanted Asgard in the hands of Odin, not you. He knew that the Allfather would keep it isolated and out of his War of Realms. Meleketh and his cabal were determined to see you dead. I knew that you would never make that choice willingly, so I made it for you. But if you don't wish for my help, I understand. No god in all of the heavens can do anything to stop Mangog, not the Allfather, not the Odinson, and not you. There are some things that you just can't save. Goodbye, Lady Freya. Over in the control room, both Odin and Odinson are thrown into it, and Mangog lands, stating, you aren't the Thor that I remember, or the Allfather for that. But you both are still rather stubborn when it comes to dying. Odinson tells him that they killed him once before and they'll do it again. Mangog laughs, grabbing the control panel for Asgard and begins to rip it apart, causing the floating city to start speeding towards the sun. Mangog asks, can you hear that? The screams of the poor damned souls calling out across the cosmos. Mangog then grabs Odin and Odinson in his hands and Freya with his tail, telling them, I will answer your prayers though. Your prayers for death. Back on Earth, Jane begins to walk around the hospital and overhears Rosalind speaking to Alpha Flight. Rosalind tells him, yeah, I know my security clearance expired when S.H.I.E.L.D. went under, but think of this as an anonymous tip. You should be able to locate Asgard, right? Well, you need to look. Odinson left like a goat out of hell, and I can't call the Bifrost. Yeah, it's out near Saturn, a big golden city floating out in space. You can't miss it. What do you mean it's not there? Of course it's there. It's passing Mars? Why would it? Wait, it's on a course for what? Pass me through to the Avengers. Jane doesn't say a word as she heads to her room and begins to look through her paperwork. She looks at her hand and says that she should have beaten this cancer. And then she looks out the window to see her hammer floating there. She waits, and then she grabs it by the handle, and she sees everything that is happening to Asgard. She hears Mangog stating the death of a god, and there is nothing in the cosmos like that feeling. Tell him, do you feel it too? Or should he? There's suddenly a booming crackoon as Jane appears before Mangog, and she tells him, you should take your filthy hands off those gods and get ready to face the fury of Thor. After a few exchanges of blows, Jane hits Mangog with a thunderous crack in his mouth. The force from her blow sends Mangog crashing into the golden statue of Odin, and as he hits it, Jane calls down the lightning to melt the statue over him. She lands, breathing heavy from the hit, and says that she fought the Destroyer. She fought the Allfather himself, and she has never felt such rage. Odin gets up, stating that it won't stop him for long. Nothing can stop the Mangog, not even death, not even our deaths. Jane tells him that it'll hold him long enough. Asgard is flying into the sun. He and the others need to evacuate at once. Freya then walks up, stating, and leave you to face Mangog alone? Nay. Jane looks around and the warriors of Asgard are routed. The Rainbow Bridge is shattered. The Allfather is leaking like a one-eyed sieve, and Thor is their only hope. But that's when Odinson shouts, no! You shouldn't be here! What did you do? You've killed yourself! And Odin then asks, what is he going on about? But at that moment, Mangog breaks free of the melted gold, and Jane yells that they must leave now. The world needs more than just one Thor. They need gods that they can believe in. Tell the gods that it is time to earn the gift that they've all been given. As Jane finishes, Mangog lunges and tackling her through the ground, telling Jane that she fights for the gods, but she herself isn't entirely a god, is she? Jane struggles to push him off, stating that she may not be a god, but he is entirely a monster. Mangog picks her up, throwing her into a wall, stating that she has hated them. Deep down in your heart, you know that they deserve this. After being punched into the air, Mangog tells her, "Why not just let me kill them? It is why I exist, not stand aside." Jane rockets back, shouting she cannot allow that. And as she gets close, Mangog takes a slab of stone, slamming it down onto Jane, pinning her to the ground. Mangog then asks, "Why throw your life away? You would sacrifice yourself 1,000 times, and things would still never change. Why would you die for the gods?" Jane thinks about all the things in her life, and she bursts out from underneath the slab, punching into Mangog, telling him that she dies not for them, but for love. He would die not, but hate. That is why he will always lose. With all of the strength that Jane can muster, she throws Mangog headfirst into the sun. Everyone watches, and Freya says that she's done it. They are saved. The gods, they bless Thor. Odinson quietly says that they have no idea what she's done. She's doomed herself. They have to. But before he could finish, Mangog rockets back towards Jane, screaming and asking, "You yearn to be a god? Very well. You can die like one." Jane tries to free her arm, telling him that was the plan, but she will not die alone. And she punches Mangog's face. Odinson leaps out, cutting off his tail, yelling, "I, nor slay alone either." Jane yells that he needs to get out of here. They're getting close to the sun. And Mangog roars, shouting that nothing can stop Mangog. No gods in heaven or hells. No all-fathers or all-mothers. No magic, no thunder, no Thor. Mangog knocks Jane back down to the ground, and as she gets back up, she grabs a chain, wrapping it around Mjolnir. She takes that chain, and she throws it around Mangog, stating, "These chains are forged by dwarves to bind the monster wolf Fenris. Let's see how they fit a Mangog." He tries to struggle through the chains, yelling that he is the only thing that can save this universe from divine ruin. And Jane tells him that in the end, it was not a god. 'Twas a mortal named Jane, a woman who gave up everything in order to stop him. Remember that. Fly true, my friend. Fly like the mighty storm that you are. Jane then takes the hammer and throws it into the sky, and the hammer shoots off into the sun's core. Odinson shouts, asking, "What did you just do? You threw the hammer into the sun. You're killing Mjolnir. You just killed yourself." She begins to take off her helmet, telling him she knows. She knows she won't survive another transformation. She knows exactly what she has done. Odinson says that they could still get her to the healers. We could still save you. And Jane stops him, telling him that there isn't time for that. Not that it would matter. Let them not waste what little time they have. And Odinson says he doesn't know what to say. Jane holds his face and tells him, "Say goodbye." As they begin to kiss, Jane's body begins to revert back to its original form. And as she does, Asgard begins to burn and fall apart. Just then, Asgard explodes for all to see, with Freya stepping forward, tears running down her face. She says perhaps there is still a chance that they could have made it out. Odin hangs his head, telling her that she feels the same as he does, the chill of death. And then there's a loud thoom hitting the moon's surface. As the dust settles, Odinson sits there, holding Jane's lifeless body. As traces of Mangog fade, the gods begin to gather around the woman who was their Thor, Jane. Freya shouts that this is not how it ends. Where are the boar-damned healers? As Odinson runs over to her, Odin stares out for a moment before scoffing and walking off to disappear. Sif asks Heimdall if he is truly, and Heimdall tells her that even blindfolded he can see the truth. He's afraid that it is too late, dear sister, she has gone. The goddess of thunder is dead. May she find a way without haste to the halls of the honored slain. Meanwhile, at the gates of Valhalla, a younger, healthier Jane wanders through the fog, asking if anyone's there. As she looks up at the gates, she says that this is Valhalla. That means that she's... But before she could even finish the sentence, Odin shouts, "You! It was you all along! You're the one who stole the hammer, robbing my son of his birthright, his very name. You've also been the source of all of my troubles for months, turned all of Asgard against me." Jane tells him actually he did that all by himself. And without even acknowledging it, Odin continues shouting that she dared lay her hands and hammer against him, the Holy Allfather, in personal combat. And you even defeated Mangog when no one else in the heavens could stand his wrath. You fought on, so much so that it cost you your life. Everyone that I know and love would be dead if it was not for you. My wife, my son, even I myself. You fought until your very last breath to save the gods of Asgard. 'Twas a glorious death. That is why you, Jane Foster of Midgard, have earned your place among the most venerated of the fallen warriors. Your eternal reward awaits. Welcome to Valhalla, Mighty Thor. As the gates of Valhalla open, she looks in and sees the beautiful scene of peace. But rather than walk towards it, she stands there. Odin asks why she hesitates. A great feast is about to begin in your honor. Be not afraid. You have nothing more to fear from me or anyone else ever again. As Odin places his hand on Jane, she looks at him and says that she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to die. Back on the moon, the healers surround Jane's body, stating that it is of no use. There is still no pulse. Their spells have no effect on her. Sif looks up and at the gathering storm and says that she's never quite seen a stellar squall like this. Heimdall tells her that even when he had eyes, he never beheld such a storm, but he has heard tell of one. The god Tempest, the mother's storm, which means the legends must be true. The ancient superstorm truly was the heart of Mjolnir. With the hammer now gone, the Tempest has been unleashed, and it would appear to be angry, and 'tis not the only one. Across him, Odinson slams his axe into the ground, shouting in anger, calling down to the Mother Storm, telling it to show him why they call her the god Tempest. Freya runs up and tells him to calm thyself. She knows what he is trying to do. He cannot channel such a storm. It is too strong, it would. But before she could finish, there's a loud crack-coom as Odinson is struck by lightning. He shouts to everyone to get away from Jane. She cannot be dead. She was the mighty Thor. She has thunder in her veins. Using the power of the Mother Storm, Odinson begins to try and channel its power into Jane to bring her back. And back at the gates of Valhalla, Odin asks Jane, why is she waiting? You have never tasted meals as what awaits you, and believe me, it's worth whatever agonies you have suffered. Jane stares through the gate, stating that she knows that she should want to. But there's something holding her back, almost like. But before she could say another word, she screams out in pain. Back on the moon, Odinson continues pouring the power of the Mother Storm into Jane, telling everyone to stand back. He will bring her back. And as Odinson gives another pulse of lightning, Jane screams out in pain again. Odin then asks, how is she under attack in the land of the dead? Who is responsible for this blasphemy? As Jane rolls over, Odin says that he sees it now, even from across the void. It's the god Tempest that clings to you. Over on the moon, Odinson is pumping another pulse of energy, and the healers tell him that there is still no pulse. She is simply, but Odinson yells to get away from her. The healer then states that he must stop this. His arm is melting. Not even he can control such power. Odinson weakly tells them to get back, but then a hand reaches out to Odinson, telling him that they speak the truth. Odin tells him that he cannot control the powers of the god Tempest. No god ever could, but luckily for Lady Jane, there's more than one of them. Back at the gates, Jane looks through, debating what she should do, and over on the moon, Odin and Odinson together gather their strength, channeling it into Jane. Odinson asks if she's truly gone, and Odin tells him that she is standing at the gates of Valhalla, refusing to cross over. She's convinced her story hasn't ended, so let us see if she is right. In the name of Asgard, in the name of Thor! With one final stroke of lightning, there is a coom, and the entire side of the moon lights up as the smoke begins to clear. Everyone watches and they see a small crackle of lightning from Jane's eyes. Just then they open as she gasps for air. And a few days later, on old Asgard, Odinson asks what she thinks. Jane looks around at the people rebuilding the land, stating that it is pretty broken. It's a perfect home for them. Odinson tells her nay, not for her. This is a land where he was born, but for her. She's going back to Midgard, to the hospital where she belongs. Jane laughs, telling him to relax. This is just a visit. Believe it or not, she's finally being a good patient. As the two look up at the sun, Odinson says that it's a worthy death for Mjolnir. It's a worthy death for mighty Thor. Jane looks at him and says that Thors can't die, son of Odin. Not now. Not ever. That's why I came. Odinson sighs and tells her, without Mjolnir no more will he ever be the unworthy prince of Asgard. The age of Thor has ended. Jane then tells Odinson to hold out his hand, and as he does, he feels something heavy hit it, and he asks what. He looks and sees a small fragment of the hammer, and as he struggles to hold it back up, he says that it is such a small piece. That tells him that he could never lift the hammer. He is still not. But Jane stops him and tells him that the hammer made her the Thunderer, but not him. He did it all by himself, and though she was honored to carry the mantle, it is time for him to reclaim it. There must always be a Thor, now and once again, and it must be him. She showed everyone what she could do with the hammer in her hand, and now it's time for him to show everyone what he can do without it. Odinson looks at the fragment and says that he has a few ideas. Gods, it would be great to fly again. He hugs Jane, telling her that he loves her, and that she is more than a god than he could ever be. Jane hugs him back, stating that he has got more humanity than most humans. Odinson turns back, shouting, "Where are those dwarves? Where are those blacksmiths?" She smiles and walks to the edge of old Asgard and says, "Thors and their hammers." She gets it now. She's gonna miss flying too. though the skies themselves aren't going anywhere. And neither is she. And there you have it, the full story of Jane Foster Thor. Now, I believe we may have missed a story or two, but if we did, they weren't that important to the overall plot line as to what was going on. This was all of the core plot points towards that storyline. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we do a lot of things here at Comicstorian, which include podcasts, the audio dramas, and stuff like that. So if you do enjoy this and you want to keep up to date in your favorite pop culture lore, then please consider sticking around by subscribing to our channel and following us on Twitter at Comicstorian. Hope to see you there, and thank you so much.